Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. Our guest today is Allen Turner, the owner of Allen Turner Automotive Group. When Allen turned 12 years old, his father became an independent auto dealer, leading him to spend every spare moment in a car lot. Allen has found immense joy in his job and loves coming to work every day to build successful relationships with his technicians and employees. Allen has served as the past president of the Florida Auto Dealers Association and continues to work hard to protect the industry that we all love. For today's discussion, we are diving into technicians and how they are the most important asset to a dealership. We will also go over short-term and long-term recruiting strategies, as well as how shops can work with their competitors. Thanks for joining me today, Allen. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to have another person that's kind of spent their entire life in this industry. But I'm curious how your dad got into it. How at 12 years old did he decide that he wanted to become an independent auto dealer?
Well, I was 12. My dad, he was one of those guys that he was a car guy, so he always had a spare car in the yard. He was always buying one or fixing one, and so he finally worked it out with my mom that he could break into the industry. He had a friend who had done the same thing, and so he kind of followed him down that path. And at 12 years old, I didn't understand. We lived in a small town in Alabama, and I'm thinking, how many cars can you sell in this small town every month? I don't know how this is going to make a living, but anyway, he did very well at it. And it was in those formative years for me, I'm 12, 13, 14 years old. I just wanted to be there. He eventually had some technicians and then some body shop guys, and I just know that I was bugging them terribly bad. But I wanted to learn how to do it all. The mechanic work, I liked that part of it, but I really enjoyed the body shop stuff, putting something together that was torn up, but I wasn't very good at it. I could never get a fender straight again, so I just go buy a new one. But anyway, it was a good time. I enjoyed it, and then of course he got out after a few years, but I was already bid at that time, so it's been a good run for a long time.
It's funny how that works in our industry. It feels like once you're in, you're kind of in.
It gets in your blood. You see a lot of car dealers who are just keep doing it too long. They just don't want to go home and retire. And of course, my dad's 85 today, and I think he's probably got a Ford truck in his yard that he bought from someone, and he's going to sell it. He's 85 and he loves it, so it's a good thing.
What was your first job then, as you're coming in as a 12-year-old? What did you get to do?
It's where everybody starts, on the wash rack, right? I mean, you had to wash them, clean them, vacuum, whatever your dad said, But I did all of that, and then eventually figured out, I like the running the sales part of it. And then once my father kind of wound his thing down there, I just kind of wholesale cars around for a long time, and then I realized that's kind of got to get up and go do that every Monday morning. There's no residual to wholesaling cars. It's kind of a one-man show, and so didn't really like the prospects of dealing with the retail public, maybe because of some opinions that I had formed as a 16-year-old. But anyway, realized that was the way to grow, and so a partner and I, we kind of ventured over into the retail business and left the wholesale aside, and then that grew into actually buying out my partner and then having some franchises and adding some more stores, and it's kind of how we got to where we are.
How crazy of a time was it during that process when you're going through and you're trying to buy your own dealership? How much anxiety was there from your standpoint? Was it fairly simple, or was it really complicated?
It wasn't too bad. It was kind of a gradual thing. We had a small independent lot, and then the Acura dealership in our town went out of business. So there was this nice big glass building there in Car City, what we call it in Pensacola. And so we bought that building. At the time, it seemed like it was a lot of money, but looking back, it wasn't. In fact, I still own that property. But we just sold used cars in that old Acura building. It was a nice building. And then, realizing that we needed a franchise dealer in those days, you had better financing opportunities to sell your cars. There were better insurance companies, and you just were more legitimate. So we wanted a shingle, and there was no Hyundai dealer in our town. At the time, there was no Kia dealer either, and we should have tried to figure out a way to take both of them. But we took Hyundai, which I think was the right choice, and so then there we had our first franchise. So it wasn't very stressful. I think we paid We paid Hyundai $17,000 for a sign and a startup parts kit. So that was 1998. Hyundai was just on the other end of a really bad car. In 1999, they came out with 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and then all through the early 2000s, the quality began to get better and better and better. And then we bought a Mazda deal from a friend in town, and then we had Suzuki, and then we took the Daewoo franchise. And so we just, any franchise that was around that we could afford, obviously the cheaper ones, we tried to buy those. And in 2002, I bought him out. Daewoo went belly up in America, sold the Mazda and the Suzuki, and just had Hyundai, and really kind of went through some growth there. And through the 2000s, their quality was getting so much better. And then 2011, the new little Sonata came out. And during the old recession there, you remember Hyundai had that job loss protection, really gave them a lot of free advertising for that. Then the tsunami, the tsunami took out a lot of the Japanese competitors, but Hyundai had cars. So we got a lot of extra market share in that 2010-11 range during the tsunami. So some things happened that were certainly in my favor, but it was good. And then in 2013, I bought a Chevrolet dealership in a neighboring town. And then in 2021, my daughters went to Auburn University and just kind of hanging around Auburn a little bit and got to know the Hyundai dealer there, and he was ready to retire, so we bought another Hyundai Genesis store in Auburn, Alabama. So that's where we stand now I actually have a used car store in Pensacola that was the old Toyota dealership. He moved out, built a new facility. We bought that property. It was very close to my Hyundai store. So that's our format right now.
It's really fun to see. I give Hyundai a lot of credit for the increasing quality over the years, and I think the public perception in driving, I think they came in as a kind of a lower end car to now where they're, it's a nice vehicle. I mean, I've got friends that have Hyundais that are really impressive, really, really impressive. The comfortable ride, just really nice cars. And, I don't know if you could have probably said that 20, 25 years ago, right? Like, I think it's changed dramatically.
Well, we didn't, it was our brand. It was the brand that we had, and we just sold them to everybody. I mean, my mother, my mother-in-law, my daughters, we've all just driven Hyundai. We treated it like a tier 1 brand from the beginning, and it's certainly grown into that. We built a new facility in 19, that new brown and tan Hyundai building that they have as part of their image now. We moved into that building in 19, and since then, the last 2 years, we've outsold the Toyota dealer in our town, which we feel like we've treated it like a tier 1 brand, and it's rewarded us in that. But the Koreans are an interesting people. We've heard the saying, "Our strengths become our weaknesses." The Koreans are sometimes difficult to deal with. They're a little bit dogmatic in what they believe, and they're very strong-willed people. But if we look back to maybe early 1990, 1992, sometime in that time frame when their car was not very good at all, if they didn't have that drive and that keen sense inside of them that they wanted to prove that they could build a good quality product, they would have probably just left America. But instead, they came out with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, which was the first ever to say, we believe in our car. and so sometimes when we're having a difficult conversation with the factory and we just can't seem to find any level ground there, or any common ground, I have to realize, if they weren't stubborn in some ways, they might not even be here. So the fact that they are who they are and they're wired that way is why they stayed, because it would have been very easy for them to just leave. But today, as we look back on it, it's been a little bit of a rocky road, 20 years ago, but great cars. Great cars. And then, of course, the Genesis, they've rolled out a luxury brand, and the Genesis car is just phenomenal. We've built that old Acura building that we built, we've turned that into a new Genesis store. So our Hyundai store and our Genesis store in Florida is now separated, and it has its standalone deal. So that was kind of the grandfather, the man who discovered Hyundai. He brought them to America. His son, who's no longer the chairman, his idea was to increase the quality, which he did. And now the grandson of the originating founder is the CEO of Hyundai, and he is his deal was to bring a luxury brand. So when you think of Toyota and Lexus, Honda and Acura, that's the Hyundai Genesis, stack. So anyway, it's been a really good ride with Hyundai.
That's great to hear. Well, and I think when we talk about you talked about the legacies that the Hyundai, like the whole Hyundai family, has created. Something that I've really enjoyed in our conversation prior to doing the podcast was your view on technicians. And coming from a dealer principal seat, I think you have such a refreshing take on technicians and how important they are to your dealership. I want to talk about this in a little bit more detail and talk through maybe why your mindset is what it is, but maybe let's start with what your mindset on technicians is. They're really important to you, aren't they?
They are. My belief is that the technician is the most important person in the dealership. And, it goes back a little bit to my DNA. I want to do volume. And so I don't want to just sell 60 new cars and 50 used cars. I want to be a factor in the markets that I'm in. I want to be the number one new car and the number one used car guy. And so I'll sell a car for less just because I want to do volume. It gets you more trade-ins, more customers, more trip through F&I, more dock fees. But the important thing for the technician, it puts more units in operation. So we look at those VIN numbers that are in my market. That's what's going to support parts and service. And so for the amount of expenses that are covered by the parts department and the service department, the more that we can cover in the back of the house, the freer we are up front to sell a car for less. I mean, if my parts and service department's not making much money or not covering very much of the expenses, then I have to get it all up front. Well, in today's competitive world, everyone's shopping price, and of course, there's car dealers that are still playing games with price just like they used to in the newspaper years ago. But you have you have an ability to sell a car for less if the back end of the house is carrying more of the expenses. And so I want to sell a bunch of cars, do whatever I need to do to get rid of cars. Every time we get a new car, we PDI it. Every time we get a used car, we run it through the shop before we sell it. We sell extended warranties. Those customers come back. So that whole ball of wax rolls there. But it breaks down when I put all these units in operation and Miss Jones can't get her air condition fixed. It's a problem. And so we've all heard the saying, sales sells the first car and service sells the rest of them. If we go to our favorite restaurant, they've got the best food in town, but it takes an hour and a half to get it, we're not going to go back. And it's the same way. If they can't get their Hyundai, Ford, Toyota, Mazda, if they can't get it serviced the way that they want, they're going to defect to someone. They might buy a car that's maybe their second choice on car, but that dealership might have a better reputation for service. That all hinges on the technician. I believe that, for me, the reason I say the technician is the most important guy in the dealership is because my whole game plan breaks down when he's not there. When you call my store and we're having to schedule you out 3 weeks to find out why your check engine light's on, that's a problem. And Miss Jones don't appreciate that, so.
Is that something that you've always kind of had that mindset about? Or was it that type of model of running a dealership? Or was that something that changed over the years?
I've always wanted to do volume. I mean, car dealers we're egotistical people. We want to be number one, and we want to sell all the cars. So I think that's kind of in our, the way that we're wired. But the technician shortage has been evolving over the last couple of decades, worse and worse and worse. And so I think as a whole, we have to be cognizant of, educating. I think I said 8th graders. My wife corrected me on that. Maybe it should be, 10th or 11th graders. But kids have to understand the kind of money that you can make. Anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent, but there's it's been evolving because the problem's getting worse, and we sell more cars than we ever sold, and luckily a lot of the OEMs don't want more rooftops, and so if Hyundai is not putting in more open points in the market, which is a good thing for the existing dealers, then we're going to have more throughput. We're going to sell more cars at our store. So if I've been selling 130 cars and because of COVID and, great economy and all the money that's in the economy, now we're selling 160. Well, in about 18 months, those cars are going to show up in my shop for things other than oil changes, and I got to have the technician there. Or then we get into a bad scenario where we're scheduling people too far out, or we're rushing, or we don't have train techs, we're not fixing the car right the first time. All those scenarios.
Did you hear the news? WrenchWay is launching local chapters across the U.S. WrenchWay local chapters bring together the best shops and dealerships with schools, technicians, and other industry professionals with the goal of promoting and improving auto and diesel careers in local communities. WrenchWay's local online communities provide a detailed look at what it's like working at the best shops in the area, an effective way for schools to connect with local shops and dealerships, an engaging forum for members to discuss industry topics, and a fun way to win prizes while helping the industry and local schools. WrenchWay local chapters are now available in Charlotte, Dallas, Fort Worth, Denver, Detroit, Houston, Indianapolis, Madison, Milwaukee, the Twin Cities, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, and Raleigh, with more chapters coming soon. Learn more and join wrenchway.com/local-chapters. Link is in the show notes.
So the technician is core to your model, and I think it's key that all facets or everybody in a dealership at least understands that they're really important, right? And I think that was one of the, it still is in a lot of ways, a primary complaint that we hear from technicians, all across the country, is that a lot of times they feel like a number. They don't feel like they're appreciated by the sales team or, by the service advisors or whoever it might be. Is that hard to get others to look at technicians maybe in the same light that you do?
I think that goes back to top-down culture. We're on the team, and so if you want to get me really riled up, let's have a busy Saturday. And let's let a salesman go back and just really chew out a detail guy because the car he sold is not getting cleaned up fast enough. That's a pretty good way to exit the scenario, because we're all on the team, and somebody's selling, somebody's doing the accounting, someone's there for the customer when they come back, somebody's got to detail them, but we're all human beings, and we talk a lot about culture at work, about enjoying where you work, and we want to be that way, and so if someone doesn't, if they act like they don't appreciate another team member, then that's not a scenario we like. But when they hear the dealer say, I'm telling y'all listen to me, the technician's the most important guy in the store, it kind of sets the tone, So that's why we're doing the things that we do to try to recruit them, retain them, give them the tools that they need to do their jobs. We profit share evenly across the board. Every employee gets a portion of the profit at the end of the year, and it's the technician gets the same as the general manager. 401ks and food trucks and ice cream sandwiches on a hot day. All of those things are just things that are part of what we do, and I think it helps. In this day and age, some shops are climate controlled. We don't ever say air conditioned, but some shops are climate controlled and some are not. And so that's a key factor, especially here in the panhandle of Florida, where it's averaged, 1 million degrees the last 2 months. But that's an important thing. And then, when a technician has a problem, you need to listen. He's no different than, the title clerk. They need to get our attention. And, there again, that goes back to a lot of service managers. Service managers all have a reputation, and everybody around town knows about my guy. And they know about the Toyota guy and the Ford guy and the Nissan guy. So technicians, just like that Facebook page with Hyundai, they talk. Every brand's got a reputation. Every service manager, every shop, every dealer, every dealership. So they talk and they compare notes. And it's like someone told me one time about all of our advertising at dealerships. it's not who we say we are anymore. It's who they say we are. So we don't get to say who we are. The Google reviews and the dealer rater reviews, they get to say who we are as businesses. And so that's the same thing with technicians. They decide if I'm a good guy to work for or not. I can act accordingly, but I have less say in it than I probably had years before social media. Well, even before social media, they all, the technicians, they all go to the same place to eat lunch, in Car City anyway. So they're going to talk and they're going to decide for themselves, which brand they want to work for and, all that.
You hit on so many good points right there. I want to pull a couple of them out of there. The first being that your reputation precedes you, right? When it comes to a technician, they have a pretty good sense of what your reputation as a dealership is, what the benefits are, what the pay is. I talk with a lot of dealerships, just shops in general, that are hesitant to maybe put their compensation ranges out there or something like that. And we've had industry panels through WrenchWay where we've asked technicians point blank how well they know what the competitive dealerships are paying and what the others in their own dealership are making. And it's a struggle, I think, from an ownership or a leadership standpoint to try and control that, because what they were talking about was that it is fully transparent, right? One technician on the roundtable talked about how when a new technician comes in, they take them out and grab some beers, and they find out everything out about the dealership they came from, and they really know the pulse of the industry maybe better than a lot of upper management or leadership does, just because I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like it's almost one of those things where they're destined to find out one way or the other. And the more as dealerships we try to kind of safeguard that, the more and more I think people try to find it out. So it's such a weird dynamic. And when I was on the industry side, it was one of maybe a level of frustration with me. But I also think it's going to happen, and we almost just have to adapt to it a little bit. Am I off base there?
No, I think you're correct. I mean, they're going to, dealers go to 20 groups, and we share ideas and exchange best practices at 20 groups. And the technicians, maybe they do that at a barbecue at someone's house, or they take the new guy out for beers, or they do it on the golf course, or wherever. If they're fishing, whatever they're doing, they're technicians, and they're interested in how to advance their career and what can I learn from this guy and what makes me better and what mistakes can I avoid. So they're no different. That's just human nature. And so they're going to talk. It would be wiser to howl at the moon than it would be to try to stop that. So the problem with technician pay is every technician is different. I can hire, absolutely green guys that know nothing about cars and put them with a trainer in our technician program, our apprentice program, and I can start them all out at $12 or $14 or whatever the market is in your deal, and they're going to advance differently. There's some person's going to find a home. I can think of one of our technicians now. He's happy as a lark, and he's on the lube rack, and that's just where he wants to be. He loves it. He comes in, works hard, great guy, good employee. And then others want to advance beyond that. And then in this whole technician training program, sometimes there are disappointments for sure, because you'll get a guy up and he'll go, I just don't think this is me. I had a technician tell me the other day, young guy, only been with us for a few months. He was a part of our apprentice program, and he said, I just don't like the pressure of all this being on me. I think I need a factory job, so I'm doing the same thing all day, and some people are wired that way. So it just happens. Everyone's different. So to say that we're going to pay, A-Techs X, and we're going to pay B-Techs and C-Techs, and there's a number, and all of you A-Techs, you're all getting paid the same. It's just every situation is different. Anyway.
A very valid point there, and I think you're spot on in regard to your outlook on that, or the way that you see that. The other thing that I wanted to pull out of what you were saying earlier was the need for great culture, and I think it sounds almost cliche because we talk about it so much. Not only our industry, but like every other business out there talks about culture. And I always say that you don't know how important a good culture is until you have a bad one. And I've worked in shops that have had negative cultures and maybe negative people in them that kind of drive that culture. And I want to kind of get your idea of what a good culture looks like in a shop or in your dealership as a whole. Walk me through maybe what that means to you.
Well, I think it just means treating people, golden rule, treating others the way you want to be treated, realizing that people they're humans and they're not numbers. And so whether we're technicians or salesmen or accounting, a title clerk, we have a life to live. And there's a grandkids event that's going to happen. There's a son that's going to play t-ball this Saturday. There's going to be sickness. Just life happens. And so we on the sales force, if Fred doesn't come to work today, someone else is going to catch his customer. Unfortunately, in the shop, we've already booked 8 hours or 10 hours for that technician, whatever our efficiency level is. And so when he doesn't show, then the service manager is grappling with, gosh, Fred's on vacation and now Joey called in sick. And so, but the customers are still coming, and so we got to hustle, and everybody just got to kind of soak it up. So, it's kind of like Nick Saban said, I can handle good news and I can handle bad news, but I hate surprises. Well, those surprises come for that service manager via text about 7 o'clock every morning. So we spend a lot of time in the industry or at work in the automobile industry, more so for salesmen and managers and F&I people than technicians. But we want to come to work and have it, we want to be a fun place to work. We want to enjoy it. If we're having a good time, it doesn't feel like work. It's like, I think about, how much would they have to pay you to do a job that you hated? But on the other end of that spectrum, if it doesn't feel like work, if you're having a good time, it doesn't feel like work. So I think that we all want that cozy feeling of working in a place like that. But at the same time, even from the dealership, from the dealer owner, we've got to look in the mirror every morning and go, am I that guy? I need to be the guy that someone wants to work beside, the guy or the gal. I want to be a good coworker. I want to do my part to elevate this place to be a place of good working. And so I think that's the culture. Culture, like you said, it's become a buzzword. Everybody says it. It's difficult to do. In our industry, we have a thing called reputation management. Well, I've always said the best way to manage your reputation is have a good one. It's not much work if you have a good one, but if you just have a terrible reputation and you're fending off bad reviews and customer calls every morning, that's a terrible way to live. It's you're doing triage instead of following processes that you should be doing. So, same thing in the culture world. We just I don't know. I think things that I say to our employees is we've got our pay's got to be there. I mean, if title clerks make $20 an hour in my town, I can't work one for 16 because she's going to spend all her time looking for a job. And so pay is certainly a part of it, although based on a study by the Department of Labor, the employees say that pay is 5th on the list, where managers say that pay is number 1. But the number one thing that employees want to know is they want to be in on the decision. So if there's a better way to be efficient in my shop, I should listen to the technicians that are actually in the shop doing those things, because if there's a way to do something better or more cost effectively or more time effective, then I would need to listen to them for that. But we've got to pay is certainly a part of it. We've got to give them the tools to do their job. We've got to give them an opportunity for advancement. We've got to let them go home with their integrity in check every night. And I tell employees all the time, if you lie, cheat, and steal, you're not going to work here. I'm not ever going to encourage that. I'm not going to allow that. So we make enough honest mistakes that we've got to fix and cover up for customers whenever, not cover up, but we've got to rectify.
Make up for them.
And so we want that person to go home with their integrity in check. We profit share. We add to their 401k. We provide health care as much as we can. I tell people all the time that the coolest thing a service manager can do, and of course we're in Florida and it's hot, and I love ice cream. So the coolest thing a service manager can do is walk through his shop with $50 worth of ice cream sandwiches about 2 o'clock. That's a great pick-me-up. It's just a little thing, doesn't cost much money, but it says to those technicians, man, he took a minute, it was cool, knowing what's going on. I tell people all the time, you got to know your team. If you're going to build your team, you've got to know it. And your team, no matter whose team it is, whether there's 2 people on it or 25, they're all individuals. And so we talked about the pay different, the skill set's different, the temperament for different problems are good. A guy that's not good at an air-conditioned job, we don't need to give him an air-conditioned job. So we have to realize that our team is made up of individuals, and I tell managers, know your team, know your team. It's a sad thing, but sometimes we part ways with an employee, and if the first time that an employee learns he's got a problem is the day you're terminating him, then that's shame on us, because we should have been counseling with, hey Fred, you just can't seem to get here at 7:30. What's wrong? And so we should if we let Fred go, Fred should fully be clear on why we're letting him go well before that ever happens. So just knowing the team, individuals, a lot of time with younger guys, the manager's got to be their lawyer. He's got to give them legal advice. He's got to be their dad. He's got to help them. He's got to be their banker. He's got to be their pastor. He's got to be all of those things, because a lot of instances they don't have a authority figure in their life. And if they look up and respect their boss, they'll ask them for advice. Maybe that's the sign that they respect you. If they never ask you for your opinion, then that could mean that they don't respect you at all, or know you or like you. So I don't know. A lot of moving pieces in team building and culture for sure, and I don't have all the answers.
Well, I think you hit on something that I think is really important, which is to look at everybody as an individual. There's so many, I think, in our industry that might look as technicians like they are, all one person, right? They're all one demographic. They all are outdoorsmen. They all do the same thing. When in reality, if you sit down and talk with these folks, you'll see that maybe some are gamers, or some are, love sports. It's not all the same person. And I think the more you can break it down individually and know their names, know their families' names, I think that's what makes them feel like something more than a number.
Absolutely. I agree.
That's great advice in general.
Join top shops, dealers, and schools across the country to promote and improve technician careers. WrenchWay memberships help shops and dealerships engage with schools, improve technician hiring and retention, and make better business decisions with access to useful data. Shops use WrenchWay to build relationships with and support multiple schools on one platform. Show technicians why they're a great place to work. Stay up to date on best practices. Attract passive candidates. Tap into WrenchWay's growing network of industry professionals. And make better business decisions with meaningful industry data. Want to learn more about WrenchWay shop memberships? Visit WrenchWay.com and click on the For Shops tab, or contact us at info@WrenchWay.com. Link is in the show notes.
Now, one of the real challenges as it relates to recruiting is that, in my opinion, we're all so driven by a monthly P&L. We really, really work to improve each month. Of course, that's a part of business, is being a really well-performing manager on a monthly basis. But at times, I think that hurts us from the standpoint of looking at it through the long-term lens. And when I say that, that could hamper our ability to be able to grow our own people, to look at the training side with our experienced techs and put adequate training into people. Is that something you've seen over the years, that maybe there's, I don't want to say too much focus on a monthly P&L, because obviously that's really, really important, but taking a step back and looking at the long term and trying to produce something that produces sustainable results for that long term?
Absolutely, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. There's always going to be some short-term pain if there's going to be any long-term gain, and there's no doubt that and we do it differently in different shops, but if we're training, if the nucleus of our training is on lube techs, then there's got to be a trainer. Well, he costs more money, and he's just training and hiring and grooming, so he's not turning any wrenches. So we have to spread his salary out over all those trainees, and so that certainly has a negative impact on the financial statement. And then those young technicians, they're young, they're green. You have to show them, you have to check behind them. Just because we're training people don't mean that, Miss Jones wants oil on her garage floor. And so, we try to give them a safe place to make some mistakes. We let them work on our pre-owned cars, and that way if something happens, it's my car. So that's a safe place to make a mistake. But, they're just not as efficient. They sometimes have to redo a job. So all the mistakes that get made, those do cost money. But my plan is, if I'm training 5 of those guys, a couple of them are going to realize this is not for me, or we're going to realize, hey buddy, this is not your chosen field, and so we're gonna have some bumps in the road. But what makes you feel good is when you get that guy past the lube brake and you got him trained pretty good, and then we advance him to a different set of tools, and we put him over on the other side of the shop with a really seasoned technician, and we enhance that technician's pay somewhat to help mentor him further. That's when it begins to feel good, when you see a success story. And then when the rest of the shop sees when that young guy that just started today finds out that young Joey is getting to move over to flat rate and get his own lift and be out, be on his own, that's a win. And so they see that this is just not something we talk about. This really happens here. And so it's but it does cost, no doubt it costs. But I'm hoping that I can get a guy over to the other side of the shop. And then of course when we move that guy over, he will remember that I helped him and I trained him and I worked with him. He'll remember that for a while, but that doesn't mean I can work him for cheap the next 5 years. I've still got to be cognizant of what his salary level is worth to me and is worth in the market. So, we've always got to be looking. That's why they're individuals. This guy's outpaced everybody in the shop. He's supposed to make more. This guy's 115% efficient, and this guy's 84%. Which one of those is worth the most money to the store? So that's why there are individuals. If if those technicians all go out for beers and they swap their pay records, which I'm sure that they do, I need to be able to defend myself in why one guy's making $6 an hour more than the other guy. And I want to always hinge that around efficiency, because I have a stall in my shop, and basically it's like a piece of real estate. And so, I want to get the most that I can out of that piece of real estate. The tools in the shop and the lift and all that we've invested back there. But I want to base that upon efficiency. And some guys can diagnose more correctly because they're more experienced. Someone can work faster. We talk about managing your day. That's what I tell technicians. You got to manage your day. You got to manage the phone time and the downtime and not being here. Those are all important things for that young guy. When we start moving him from hourly, although we're paying him hourly, we're showing him flat rate, and we're talking about efficiency every day to prepare him for when we move him to the other side of the shop. And he's going to be getting his life is going to revolve around efficiency, and it's our job to help him remove those distractions and do everything we can to help him do that. In fact, we want to talk about here's what you earned and you were 84% efficient. Look at what your check would have been if you'd have been 110% efficient. And we don't do that in a condescending way. We just want to make sure that they understand the opportunities that they have available to them.
There's so many parallels to me to sports, and maybe that's just because I love sports as a whole, pretty much every sport. And I look at it with technicians that so much of what we do could be related to football. And when you talk about that and talk about performance and why you're paying something, a lot of football players, their salaries are pretty much public knowledge across the board, and they're paid for performance. They're the stars on the field. I say that consistently with our technicians, that they're the ones out doing the work. They're the ones that are out really performing to be able to get that. And so I love your take on being able to justify that, knowing that, hey, you know what, if you go out and talk about it, which is probably going to happen, that you're able to justify it with numbers. You're able to justify, really kind of back up why you're paying somebody what you are. And I just think that's a really smart thought process. Now, the other piece to this, and this is something that I found really fascinating with you, is your take on growing your own people. And similar to maybe that college football team or that professional football team that is growing up that next crop of good technicians, it's the same. Really growing those players. We're doing the same with technicians. I think when I heard your take on growing your own and the patience needed to develop that young person that's out there, that it was really, I don't know, I think it was really smart. I think the way that you go about trying to raise your own is really impressive. So talk to me a little bit about that in raising your own technicians and trying to afford the patience with the whole team to get them up to speed.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of talented kids that are coming out of high school picking a college to go play sports at, and there's a lot of college coaches looking into that field. So if we could just get to that level with technicians, our job would be solved. But you're right. In today's world, it shouldn't be happening, but unfortunately, dealers, recruit from other dealers, and that's it's troubling. I mean, I've done it. I've had it done to me a lot. And so, and unfortunately, I've had a lot of conversations over the years with some technicians who never were really ever planning to come to work for me, but they used our conversation to get a raise and stay where they were. And that was their intent all along. And I guess that's, no worse than me recruiting from another dealership. But I began to look at that, and there's just a lot of short-term pain in that. I mean, in the dealership world, I want to be able to, I was chairman of FADA, and so I want to be able to look other dealers, my competitors. I mean, we're going to fight hard over the car deal, but we shouldn't be stealing each other's employees. And so, I think probably the driving factor was having some employees stolen from me. And so I just began to think about how do we do this differently. And so there was a lot of things that I began to think about technicians. And the first thing is the pay. And so if we start thinking about, I mentioned 8th graders a while ago, kids in high school. I didn't go to college. I got out of high school and went to work for my dad at a little car lot. And so there's just some people that are not cut out for college. And if we think about the money that guys that do plumbing and electrical and HVAC work, those guys, they can make a lot more money than kids getting out of college. And I think about that. A good example is my daughter. My daughter gets out of college with a 4-year degree, and I began to think about, what if I had a technician that I was in this apprentice program for 4 years, where would he be monetarily? And it's about double what she would, and she didn't make any money for the 4 years I was putting her through college. Now, she went to college, got a degree, got a job, loves it. But the compensation for that is just different. So I would like for all 10th graders to know that, and I'm just speaking about my market. I'm sure there are different markets all over the country, but in our market, just a middle of the road technician, that's a $60,000, $70,000 job. Just a middle of the road guy, not a diesel mechanic or specialist, or one that's just got whatever the top ranking is for each brand. Everyone has a different name, Master Techs or whatever. That's just a middle of the road job. And so the thing that I've often thought about is, years ago, maybe when I was a boy, and I don't want to sound like the old guy looking back to the good old days, but your dad probably worked on your car a little bit, and there was a guy, your uncle or some guy down the road that had a shop, and so you hung around that, or maybe there was a race car shop or something, and so there was a place to go and kind of fertilize those interests in cars. And now everybody goes to Jiffy Lube or to the car dealership, and so there's nobody really working on their car much anymore. So there's no place for a young guy to hang out. So the shop classes are kind of non-existent in a lot of places. But anything that we can do to help promote those as dealerships and dealer associations and OEMs, we should be. But anyway, so if I think that we need to be on their radar to know that if you're not a college guy and you want to learn a trade, and there's automotive technicians, but gosh, you mentioned tractors and big trucks and motorcycles and airplanes and all of those things require technicians to work on them. And so I think educating them of what all's out there is one of the big things. And then it's an intimidating place for a young guy to walk into a shop. If I have a 19 or 20-year-old young guy who doesn't know much about it, and I'm trying to introduce him to the whole process, he walks in. Well, in his mindset, everyone in that shop is an A-Tech, and they've never misdiagnosed or misrepaired anything. They're all perfect. And he's just very intimidating. And he comes in with no tools or maybe a small Craftsman box that his uncle gave him. And it's just an intimidating place to come in. So we've got to make a soft landing for that. We talked about tools a little bit. I think that, I've met my friends at Sonic Tools, and they have a great tool. And lifetime warranty technician has an app, take a picture, and get your new tool the next day. But we've begun to buy those tool sets, and there's a beginner set, which is basically a lube tech set, and then there's an intermediate set, and then there's a professional set. Their boxes are made that you can add those to those, and so we put this technician in a training area, in a training scenario with a trainer. One store, there's a trainer for 5 lube techs, and we're doing oil change rotations, not hoses, but wipers, bulbs, air filter, cabin air filter. Those are basically the 5 things they do. And then we let them work on some used cars, and we'll let them do some small recalls. Some of the recalls on new cars are as small as just putting a new sticker in the door jamb, or they're very, very small things. It's ironic how those recalls manage our day for us. But anyway, we let them do that, but we get them a beginner set, and then after they work for us for a couple of years, they have sweat equity in that. And usually what happens is in that 2-year time frame, we're moving them from the lube rack to a flat rate technician deal, and we get them a better set of tools. And so we're just trying to find a way where they can have sweat equity in their tools, but yet have a good quality set of tools to do their job. So we talked about giving them the tools to do their job, giving them opportunity for advancement, keeping your integrity in check, but giving them a safe place to learn, make a mistake, and it not be earth-shattering. The trainers needs to make sure that all those cars on the lube rack get out with tight oil filters and tight oil plugs, and nothing catastrophic happens. And we've done pretty well at that, I believe. But it's just and that trainer, he gets paid on their efficiency. We pay that trainer on the efficiency of that guy, and usually on the lube rack we start that at about 60 to 100% efficient. Now when we move him over to a mentor relationship with another technician, then we move that efficiency range from 80 to 120, and then that technician would get an override on the trainee's efficiency. And then one day, he's on his own and he gets to train someone. And it just feels good when you move a guy over there and you look at the pay records and you understand this guy started here and now he's here and he's got an opportunity to really, afford things for his family and take good care of them. So we like that, and we talked about that otherwise the other day about the dealers. I would sit down with any dealer and tell them about that. Because if we can all begin to grow our own, then we get this awareness that, we help the awareness for technicians to know that a middle-of-the-road technician in this market is a $65,000, $70,000 a year job, and better beyond that when you get more experience. And so if we can get that word out, and we can stop swapping each other's back and forth, and we stop this moving around, and we're able to fill a void in the workforce that, I don't know, NADA tells us I think it's 60,000 technicians short across America, and that's just for automotive. That doesn't touch all those other industries that are calling for technicians. So anyway, that's kind of what we've done. But the tools are a part of that. Just a safe spot to take some of the intimidation out of it.
Again, so many great points there. I think taking the intimidation out of it is such a underrated piece of a development program and bringing a young person in, because it is terrifying. It's always awkward in your first week of working anywhere, your first month of working anywhere, and getting to know everybody. And like you said, a new technician comes in thinking that every technician in the bays are perfect and that they've never screwed up. And it's hard not to think that way as a young person, because you're just starting from scratch. And so the more you can bring that comfort level to them, and by providing maybe tools for them to use. And you had talked about Sonic. I do think Sonic is doing a fantastic job there with being able to supply some of those entry-level tools and take some of the burden off. I think looking back upon my time in industry, that was one of my big concerns, is that you're asking a lot of times the lowest paid person on the totem pole to make the biggest investment in their career. And the more you can make that a soft landing, as you said, the easier it is going to be to find these people. I think that's changed a lot over the years. So I applaud you for putting together a program like that. I do think it's really impactful.
Well, we have to do something, because, you've got kind of an entry-level job, and you want to hire this technician, and you say, well, go buy yourself a few $1,000s worth of tools and come on in, and that's he's not confident he can do that, and so he shows up with whatever he's got, and in a lot of our shops now, in our new buildings, we buy all toolboxes that match, and so the shop looks nice with all the same kind of toolboxes, so they don't have to have a toolbox. But the thing about the Sonic tools is, I want if every technician that's in an apprentice program, whether it's a beginner or an intermediate program, I want to inventory his tools once a week, and so the service manager can go to each drawer. The toolboxes are made so you just add new levels of the foam liners, and there's a cutout for each part, and so within a couple of minutes he can determine if there's any tools missing when we inventory those. And of course, when we start that, if we put a new guy on in the apprentice program, we take pictures and we put it on social media, because we want to celebrate with him a little bit about that, but we want to let the community know what we're doing. And when we move someone up, or someone gets graduated from the lube rack to flat rate, or gets a different tool assortment, we want to celebrate those things and talk about it, because we need to show the general public that we are having some wins in that. But I think it just opens up awareness to this is a place for me to start if I'm interested in this career. And there again, they're not all going to stay, because they're young and indecisive, and there's a lot of people that started a lot of careers that said, I don't really like this, and I've got to go find something else to do. So it just happens. It's not like this is just you just do it and it happens. They're not robots, but it's working good for me. And one of my shops is full. One of them, we built a new building a few years ago, and we built some extra bays because we knew we had to grow into it. And we've got room for a couple more technicians there. And then in my other shop, I have about room for about two more. One of those apprentice guys, when he moved over, he moved to the alignment rack. And my trainer there is a background in alignment, had his own shop before, so he loves the alignment rack. So we put one guy in there, so now we have a full-time guy on the alignment rack, so it acts as a 12th stall instead of an 11th in that shop. But we've just enjoyed it, and I don't want to say I'll talk to anybody about it. I would like to talk to my closest competitors about it, because I want to be able to help to retain the ones that I'm training. And we've got to, like I said before, we got to monitor what their pay is, because I can't not be competitive on pay just because I brought this guy into the industry and changed him, because he can do the math. He loves me because I trained him and I gave him an opportunity. But if he can go make $4 an hour somewhere else, then we risk losing that guy that we poured ourselves into for a while, and I don't want to do that. So we've got to remain competitive on pay.
I couldn't agree more with everything you said there. One of the things that you said that I'd like to bring attention to is when you're transitioning that tech from the lube bay to the shop, and you were talking through some of the efficiency tied to that. The importance of a mentor when they're heading out into the main shop and they're becoming a flat rate technician. It sounds like that's a pretty big deal for you.
Say again?
The mentorship. So as they're going and going kind of on their own as a technician, having a mentor, is that something that you see a lot of value in as they go into the shop, having somebody that they can really lean on once they're out there to be able to kind of guide them through everyday life as a technician?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to continue the theme that we've began in that, we want to get to that 120% efficient every day. So helping them to continue to manage their day and realizing that smoke breaks and cell phones are and not being at work, not being healthy, not taking care of ourselves. Those are some of the biggest problems that we face there. But the experienced technician knows that the mentor is coming in with this particular job, and he remembers that there's a bolt that you can easily break off on that job and cost you another 45 minutes. And so he can kind of help him with the potholes, or maybe I've always found it best that we take the front bumper off to replace that AC part. Maybe he, there's just, it's like anything. Older, experienced people in any field can help guide those new and younger people. Just helping them, so they don't, we learn from our mistakes. But gosh, if someone can just help us to avoid them, it makes us so much more efficient. So I think that happens when we move a technician from a training program into his own flat rate deal. We have a longevity bonus that kicks in at that point, so he gets an extra $1 an hour that we give him at Christmas time, in addition to his profit sharing check, kind of what we'd call a retention bonus. But we set that money aside for them. And I don't know. It's just there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm sure we've only talked about just
touch the surface.
Yeah. I think it's the big pieces are the tools, because a young guy, if he's got to go buy his tools, it's extremely expensive. And we hear older technicians that are more seasoned, and they talk about how much money they've got invested in their tools and their tool kits, and that's a staggering number to a young guy who just showed up for first day on the job. So we got to help him emotionally walk into the store with some confidence that we're going to help him. We got to give him a safe place to make some mistakes. We got to realize that all of them aren't going to make it. We've got to do the tool deals, and we've got to prepare for them on beyond that. So it's, but I don't. When I look around at the other options, the other option, I don't know any other options. And I can either grow my own or I can steal someone else's, and you steal one and then they steal two back. And so it's just not. It's not a place that we should be as owners and managers of automotive shops.
Completely agree. I did, with about 5 minutes left to go here, wanted to ask about the future of the industry as you see it. Obviously, a big shift in technology, talking about some of the EV stuff, but not only EV, just in general, the technology is continually evolving. The challenges of keeping up with that as a dealer principal, I've got to imagine it's one of those things that maybe keeps you up at night, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's something that you feel like you've got a pretty good grasp on, but it does feel like as the technology continually changes and it's actually getting faster as it does change, that it can be a little tougher to keep up with.
For sure. It doesn't keep me up at night because, at a Hyundai store or a Ford store or a Toyota store, they're building those products. They've got to tell us about those products. So we've got to always lean towards training. If we're skimpy on training all across the dealership, that's not a good place to be. So we've got to train technicians. The factory requires a lot of it. So that's important. Obviously we shift to electric cars. Everybody, the first thing about electric was that it's not going to tear up. Well, that's not the case. I mean, they got they don't have an internal combustion engine, but they've got electric motors. They've got wipers and cruise controls and power windows, and they have tires and brakes and shocks, and they're heavier. And they're going to get wrecked because so the automotive repair people, the body shops don't have to worry. but the technology is changing, and it's changing at warp speed. So we've got to just always, I mean, we had 2 technicians gone for a week from my Chevy store the other day, but they came back just bubbling over with information, both on all electrical. You know, electrical is something you learn early on, but it was good for them. So we've got to spare the time and the money and the expense, and obviously the time away from the shop for them to go and get their knowledge. Just as we would we can't sell the new products that come out every year if we don't go to ride and drives and learn about them and study the product. So I don't really worry about training. It's not a thing for me because we're pretty in tune to training.
I think it's good to have that confidence, and it I think resonates throughout the dealership when you do have that confidence that this isn't, you know, the industry has always changed and we've always had to adapt, and this is just the next change that we have to adapt to. So I love that mindset, and it's just overall positive. As you are as a person, I've enjoyed our conversation today, our conversation prior to today. I think a lot of what you're doing is really on point, from anything from working with competitors to knowing the value in growing your own. So I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to join me for the podcast today. And it was really fun to get your perspective on all things automotive.
Well, I enjoyed it as well. There's a lot to be said and a lot that we can do to make our industry better. And you know, we should be really focused on it because it's so terribly important. I mean, if like I said at the beginning, we can't fix the people's cars, we probably won't earn their business the second time, and that's the entry point of that whole ball of wax.
Well, you're doing some phenomenal things. I will say special shout out to Scott Saxton from Sonic Tools. He was the one that really kind of set up this conversation, and Scott's a really good industry friend of mine. So, Scott, if you're listening, thank you so much for setting this up. This was an amazing conversation. Allen, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing some amazing things out there, and hope to have you back on the podcast someday.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Jay. Have a great day.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.